Welcome to the Private Lenders Podcast with your hosts from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
Hey everyone, as always, Chris and Jason here. Thank you so much for checking out the show, and thank you for checking out all the shows. Like our podcast and the Mastermind. First of all, we started doing this back in 2019, right? Isn't that when we first dropped the podcast?
Yeah, I think we were doing some content before then, but yes, officially the podcast was at the end of 18, early 19.
You know, in the audience was small back then, as any audience starts for any kind of show. In recent years, it has grown a ton, and we have you guys to thank for that, for watching, for listening. We have people who reach out and email us and say they went back and listened to every show, which is crazy, and we really appreciate it. Like, that's amazing. And it just goes to show you that this kind of content and training in the world of private lending is really needed. If you look at business in general, marketing, there's a ton of content out there, a ton of shows, training material. Real estate investing, there's an absolute ton of stuff you can go out there and consume. For some reason, private lending, there's almost none. And so somehow we became the biggest show in a niche. We have you guys to thank for that. But again, it just goes to show you that people want to learn how to lend safely, profitably, how to grow it into a real company. And that's what all of this has become, right? It started with the show. Quickly after that, it became the online mastermind and the training materials that we put together, the Hard Money Masterclass, everything else, the things that we do monthly, the case studies Jason's putting out once a week. And yeah, we're going to dive into what we're looking to do in 2025 to really give our community what they want and need. But I just wanted to start by saying thanks, and really we appreciate how awesome it's been.
Yeah, no doubt. And all the content comes from what we're doing every day. The original joke from the beginning was Chris and I are literally in the office every day talking about the intricacies of this business. Why not just put a freaking camera and a microphone on us both and just talk about it? Because this is stuff that we all learned. Like, we had to learn from scratch. We learned it the hard way. There wasn't any coaches, mentors, mastermind groups, consultants in this space in 2007 when we decided to jump all in. I think the only person we got advice from, or two or three people we ever got advice from, was a local attorney that we knew that had some vague experience lending some money, another hard money lender who was kind enough to go to TGI Fridays with us so we could pick his brain about some stuff. And
Yep.
Really, selfishly on his level, he wanted us to refer some of our overflow deals to him. And, that's just where it was. And, it was in essence trying to create a team of people that knew enough about this space that we could, figure out a business decision on what makes the most sense. Even finding, law firms or attorneys or, service providers to help you in this space, they don't all fully know it. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but they don't all fully know every little part of it. And anything down to us, doing valuations or doing loan doc prep, it's interviewing the right people to help us with some of these things and then making a business decision of, if does this work or does this not work? There was no cheat codes or hacks or tips or tricks that we had back in the day of, hey, can I just call somebody on the phone real quick and just ask them this question? Because it would save me a lot more time than, trying to research all this crap myself. So that's what ended up putting this podcast in place, because we're just having fun talking about what we love doing every day. And, the extension of the mastermind group came from a private lender who had a good amount of money that he was deploying in his market. And he called us up one day and he said, hey, I see you guys online and you're doing some good content for Hard Money Bankers and you seem to know what you're doing. Can you guys help me in my lending business? I'm happy to pay you guys whatever you want. We're like, yeah, that's not something that we really do. And then it kind of turned into the Hard Money Mastermind group. We're like, wow, there's a demand for private lenders and hard money lenders, new and experienced, that have been fumbling their way through this entire business without any help. So that's where it started. So let's go through some of our plans for 2025 and we can either start with where we're going with the podcast, or where we're going with the mastermind group, and then work our way into some other kind of inner circle and summer event stuff.
Yeah, sure. So we have been keeping an eye. Let's start with the podcast and kind of work our way down the funnel, I guess.
Yep.
We have been keeping an eye on the podcast metrics and how that's grown, how it's getting shared, commented, and that includes the YouTube as well. The YouTube's been making some moves, and we started to promote it a little bit more. I think that there are more people in the real estate investing space and kind of like, the be the bank type of audience that want to. A lot of people who come our way are real estate investors who want to add this to their line of business, another line of business within their world. Sometimes flippers, commercial property owners, that's definitely part of it. Some people from the mortgage world who know lending and who want to get into a more profitable niche like private lending, that's another part of our audience too. So starting out, really growing, continuing to grow the podcast so that we can help as many people as possible. And then when people really want to take the next step, they join the online mastermind so they can get that masterclass. They can come to our monthly trainings. They can see the case studies every week and just be part of the community. Throw questions in the chat. There's a lot of good interaction going there, a lot of good resources being shared. So continuing to grow that is definitely part of the plan for 25.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on some mastermind stuff. One other quick thing related to the Private Lenders podcast. If you haven't noticed, we've been doing at least 2 episodes a week and not 1 episode a week. That's been kind of a big win and a big help. And it's grown the numbers substantially. There's been folks and all of you guys and followers that want to hear more tips and tricks and things like that. And the funny thing about the lending space, the hard money lending space, is you only really give a crap about what you need help with right now. Right. And that's where it's funny because like everybody's in a different spot in their business. Right. So like where you're at $1 million portfolio is very different than where you're at a $4 or $5 million portfolio. So like if you actually look back in time, we've gone over a lot of those topics, but we're going to continue to reintroduce, some of the older topics that we've created, just so it's fresh kind of what's going on. So the plan is to continue to do the Private Lenders podcast at least twice a week. We've got some great guests lined up. And I think that's important, is hearing other people's stories, not just our stories. So the good part is there's a lot of folks and lenders that we've met inside the Inner Circle group or some other events that we've done that, we've seen grow and transition. So maybe originally they weren't ready to kind of be interviewed because they didn't really have a startup story or they hadn't transitioned. But as they've grown, it's a good time to kind of share their story with everybody. So we hope to do that, inside the mastermind group, definitely have, kind of one selfish ask. And that would be like, if there's any other content or things that you would like to see inside that, please let us know, something that's helpful. We've been trying to introduce new things like, we do, the 1 hour coaching the 1 day coaching call, or the one time of a month coaching call. I guess that's the best way to say it. It's usually about an hour to hour and a half once a month on topics that we think are intriguing for people. And it's good. We get dozens of people that come in live, and then the remaining of the folks get to, watch it at their own time slot because we record it. We're doing case studies. We're constantly kind of trying to, answer questions and try to proactively get conversations going inside that community. And it's been great. If there's anything that you would like to see that would be beneficial inside your business, obviously please let us know, and we'll see if we can, we can add that. Sometimes we take what we know for granted because it's something that we do every day, but so there's some things out there that could be super helpful to know about. So anything related to that, definitely reach out to us, inside that group.
Yeah, I want to talk about the Inner Circle a little bit too, and then we'll get to some of the new things that are coming in 25. So the Inner Circle, we have finished meeting number 5. It started here in Maryland a couple times, and then we wanted some other venues. We wanted to, go have fun and do our meetings with people in other places. So we hit Nashville, Dallas, Tampa, and then May 25 is in Charleston, South Carolina. That's the next one. The Inner Circle is full for the most part, but then there's always people who end up not being able to make the meeting. So that's like the one little caveat. If somebody has a conflict or something like that, then there could be a couple spots open there. But the reality is that you can only fit so many people into masterminding where everyone gets a chance to present you can only fit so many people into a 2-day meeting, and 2-day meeting is pretty much the max for a mastermind because they're intense days, right? They're like 9 to 5, thinking, writing, answering, talking. We hang out at night, do dinners and stuff like that. So 2 full days plus like the golf day that we do ahead of day number 1 is kind of the max there. So I know people have heard us say that. The inner circle, it's been so cool to see the growth of the members. So, I mean, there are people who have doubled and tripled their portfolios after they already had a decent start. That is, there have been people who were able to retire from their 6-figure corporate jobs because of their growth in the private lending world. People who, have been able to do it instead of a side hustle. Now they can do it full time, right? And so we've seen that happen over and over. And then, of course, there's some larger people in there, like $100 million portfolio, and the kind of challenges that they're dealing with, and the kind of things that you're dealing with in year 2 and 3 is going to be different than years like, for example, 7 and 8. You're going to run into some different stuff as you get, grow into a more and more mature company. So the inner circle has just been a fantastic experience for the members, for us. It's going to keep going for hopefully a long, long time. And because of, we're going to dive into some of the other things that we're adding in 225, but the reality is that that just fills up. There's a cap to it. There's a cap. And yet there are people who want to do more training, do more interaction with us. So we're going to talk about some of the online and offline stuff that we're adding in 25.
Yeah. And the reality of this is like, 90+% of our day is on Hard Money Bankers and focusing on our lending company. And, the remaining is, doing this, being active in the mastermind group, doing mastermind stuff, creating a badass inner circle group and some other events and things like that. Do some private consulting with some folks. But like, we love private lending, and obviously that's the goal of all of this, is to continue to be hard money lenders or private lenders ourselves. So like, it's not like we're a full on education and events company where we can just add new groups and new mastermind people and do this and do that. We were talking to a buddy of ours who's in the inner circle, and he was in some other groups, and he was telling us kind of how some of those grow. And he's like, yeah, it went from like a 2-day event to like, okay, now we do a 3-day event. Now we do a 3-day event with 2 separate rooms going in at once. So you can go from 30 people to 60 people. And then next thing you know, you're just on the road full time, just doing events. Like, that's not where we want to be. Like, we like the inner circle group. The goal of the inner circle group always is after you're in. And, if you decide you want to cancel or you want to get out, then, someone can replace your spot, but it's capped at 30 people. And that's just where it's going to be at. And again, like Chris said, there's definitely events that there's always a few people that just can't attend because, they have something else for that particular event. And then we can backfill from somebody. So one of the things that we added was a summer event in Maryland. It's a once a year. And in essence, it's very similar to the mastermind group, but there's also a little bit more of an education component on it. So, this isn't for, somebody who doesn't, this isn't like 101 stuff, right? Like, it's still for real active hard money lenders and private lenders, but it gives them ability to come to this particular group, which is in Maryland. And, maybe in the future, it'll be in different states, but this summer event in June happens to be in Maryland. And, so far the folks that are in the group are pretty active private and hard money lenders. A lot of them are kind of right between, like, call it 2 million and like 6 million, give or take. That's kind of is kind of the makeup of the room. And where we see this, kind of turning into is a little bit more on the education side than the inner circle group. The inner circle group is very mastermind oriented. I mean, that doesn't mean that we don't bring in guest speakers, and Chris and I still do presentations and things like that. But this particular summer event is going to be probably about 50% education, 50% masterminding. The mastermind component is very important because learning of what's working for other people obviously is big. But, if you have like $1 to $2 million deployed, like, you're not, and I know you might think you're getting value from somebody who's got $100 million deployed. It's one of those things that, like, you want to be around people that are a little bit bigger than you for like the next stage up, not 10 stages up, like one stage or one phase up from you. So that's just, and we've seen it because we've had people in our circle group before that, were a lot lower or bigger than everybody else. And when that happens, it's not doing anybody, it's a disservice for both sides. They're not providing value to each other. So this particular group, there's going to be a little bit more of an education component, right? Because they're still at that stage of like, hey, I need to learn and I need to grow. I need to learn. I need to grow. I need to learn. I need to execute. And yeah, it's a summer event that we're going to be doing in June. So I'm looking forward to that one. We already have, a handful of people, a handful of businesses and lenders that have already registered. We haven't really even marketed or talked about it, but when Dave, our program director, talks to some of the applicants that apply to work with us either through consulting or being in our mastermind group, he's like, hey, listen, this is going to be the best fit for you. This particular group, this is going to be a good one for you.
Yeah, so I guess that's the announcement right there, because I don't think we put that out publicly before, that we're doing the summer event here in Maryland, June of 25. So for that, or I'm also going to talk about the virtual consulting real quick, but for either one of those, check out hardmoneybusiness.com and you can schedule a time to speak to Dave Bauer, our program director. He'll walk you through all the details. So the other thing we decided to add, because of demand, really, people asking for it, is we're doing a virtual consulting. And that is 2 days intensive, 2 full days, 2 5-hour days with a max of 3 lenders in February 5th and 6th. And that's really covering all of the fundamentals of lending in a 2-day session on Zoom. And we're going to go into detail, the entire operation, from underwriting, loan servicing, raising capital, marketing, scripting with borrowers, everything front to back of the operation. So that, depending on where you are in your business, if you really want 2 days with us directly, if you're like, I need to learn all of this stuff front to back, or maybe you need to learn 1 or 2 important things to make sure you aren't putting yourself in a position where you might lose money, something like that, right? So if you're interested in that, check out hardmoneybusiness.com. And to wrap up here, I just, again, want to say thanks to everyone who's part of the mastermind, the inner circle, anybody who's checked out our podcasts, audio or on YouTube. Thank you. It's here at the end of 2024. It's been a great year for the Hard Money Mastermind. We look forward to even more cool stuff to come in 25. We hope that your lending business is going great. We hope maybe we had a small part in influencing your lending business to be more profitable and safe. Anything else to add to the thank you?
No, I agree. Thanks so much. We certainly appreciate it. One of the things, if you watched a previous episode, it might've been the last episode we actually did on this podcast, was key metrics that we track inside Hard Money Bankers. Well, there's also key metrics we track, for our mastermind group. And, as members increase and views and downloads and likes and shares on our podcast. And that's kind of the way that we look at everything, is like our podcast is where we focus a lot of, time and marketing efforts, to help and be fully transparent. And, there's a lot of lenders out there that can listen to episodes of our podcast and learn everything that they need to know. And there's some that want a little bit more hand holding, a little bit more accountability, a little bit more kind of next steps. And, there's an option for that as well. So certainly appreciate all the support, and, keep watching and listening to, this podcast, Private Lenders Podcast. We have a lot of new guests that are hopping in Q1 2025. And, we've got some great topics as well.
Thank you guys again. Hope you had a great 24. We'll see everyone after the new year. See you guys.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not intended for legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.